Think Bigger Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Justin Stoddart. Thrilled about today's episode. I think it's going to give a lot of real estate agents a solution to a problem that they've always wanted to have solved, which is how do I get more time in my life? There's endless coaching programs, endless ideas. Even here on the Think Bigger Real Estate Show, we're constantly giving you ideas of how to improve your business and how to improve your life. And the reality is, none of those are any good if you don't have any time or capacity to implement them. So I want to welcome today's guest, Bob Lachance. Let me give you a quick rundown on him, and then I'll let him talk a little bit because he's the guy you're actually going to want to listen to. He spent 8 years playing hockey at some of the highest levels, and he both here and in other countries. Got into the industry in 2004. He's founded multiple real estate coaching businesses. And he now does a lot of investment properties. He's done over 1,000, in fact, investment properties, over 700 short sales. And one thing that he's really excited about that we're going to talk more about today is the company he founded called Riva Global, which is a company that helps real estate agents outsource things that they should not be doing so that they can focus on doing things they should be doing. So Bob, apologize for the long intro, but man, it's your fault. You've got too many accomplishments. So thank you for being on the show, man. Super excited to have you here.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely appreciate you having me. You've had an incredible list of individuals on your show, and I'm a huge fan, so I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. I appreciate that. That's super fun to hear. Let me start by this. So for those of you that are just tuning in, Bob and I found that we have something else that we're passionate about beyond just the real estate industry, which is that of being dads. You should have heard Bob light up as he started we start telling stories about kids growing up and having them experience kind of athletics. So Bob, you played sports at the highest level. We're going to get to that here in a second, but let's talk first and foremost about what is your favorite part about being a father?
I think it's probably teaching them and seeing them grow up. I know you have 6 kids, which is absolutely insane to me. I have 3 kids. My oldest is 15, but I think it's teaching them the little things in lives in their lives, and also coaching them. So I coach ice hockey for them, all the youth sports growing up. So it's really a pleasure to see them grow and teach them the little life lessons that, I'm sure that you're teaching your kids as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm part of the mission of this show is to not just help people have better lives or better businesses as a result of what we talk about, but better lives. And I think, one of the greatest impacts that people can have is within the confines of their own home and the impact that they can have on the next generation. So super love the fact that you are a committed dad. I think that says a lot about you. So super, thanks so much for sharing that. Let's talk about your hockey career. Again, we're gonna start with all the good stuff, and we're gonna get to the real estate stuff at the end. But you played all the way up to NHL level, right?
Yes, so I got drafted by St. Louis Blues, who happens to now be in the Stanley Cup Finals against the Boston Bruins, which is pretty cool.
Look at you, man. That's your team.
It is my team. I played the equivalent of the AAA in baseball. I played AAA in hockey for 4 years here. I played 1 exhibition NHL game. Proud to say point a game, so that's pretty good. 1 assist, 1 game, one
Not
game.
everybody can say that.
That's right. And then I took that over to Europe. I played in Italy, Milan, Italy, Hamburg, Germany, Switzerland, Cork, Geneva, Lugano, Switzerland, for the remainder of my career. And then I happened to jump into real estate right after that.
How does hockey compare over there in Europe to here? Is it more popular, as popular, less popular?
It's in different countries. So I played in Italy, and obviously soccer is, they call it football over there. Not our football, but soccer is extremely, extremely popular. So hockey, not so much. Germany, a lot more. Switzerland, very, very popular.
Very cool. Now, tell me, what's the biggest lesson that you learned from hockey that's benefited your real estate career?
You know what, I think the most important thing in any business is actually the work ethic you have to be successful in anything. It's, you put in hours and hours. It's kind of like if you're a top producing real estate agent, you just don't fall out of bed and be a top producing real estate agent. Yeah. It takes the years of practice, the years of creating systems, following through with those systems consistently and implementing those. Just like in anything, right? You have all the training, but you also have to take the action and implement all of that training to be successful. So I think that is probably the biggest thing for me.
It's interesting that you say that. The ratio of practice time versus playtime was pretty one-sided, right? You practice and you like you said, you follow systems and processes in order to get better. Not to say that you should spend all of your time planning and prepping, right? We learned that on our previous episode from Justin McCabe, that's a bad idea.
What a great episode too.
But this concept of actually having a process, and I'm sure that to become a hockey player at the highest level, you had to be organized. You had to have like just put in massive amounts of time to get to that level, which is what you're saying is very similar to get to the point to where now you've done over 1,000 investment properties. Those same principles carried through.
Yeah, and here's one of the things I do want to say: it takes patience too. If you set a goal to sell, I don't know, $10 million of real estate as an example, it's not going to happen in the first month. It's not going to happen in the second month unless you're living in, I don't know, San Diego or LA or something, and you get that one deal that is lucky. But to do it on a consistent basis, I think it's important for everyone to know that it takes time, it takes building. And as you go along, you have to build your team, you build your partnerships. A lot of the past episodes that I listened to from like Lars Hodenberg, I believe that's what you say, and James Hedenberg. So he talked a lot about, he's from the Real Estate B School. He talked about setting up systems and getting help in reference to implementing those systems and doing it consistently. I think that was a really big takeaway I took away from that, and he's 1,000% correct.
Let's talk a little bit about your passion for helping agents outsource, and which is kind of down the path, that you're headed right now. Interesting. Mentor of mine, Chris Suarez, mentioned how NAR did a study that identified that real estate agents, 80% of their time is spent on functionary activities. So 40 out of 50 hours, right, are spent doing activities that aren't fiduciary activities. That don't necessarily require you to have a real estate license. They don't actually bring huge value to the client. Now they're important. Don't get me wrong. Like they have to happen, but they don't necessarily have to happen by the agent. Correct?
Correct. And that's actually funny you say that because, every time an agent comes to me, they say, Bob, what exact, I know I need help, but what can you guide me exactly with the help you need? And I always break it down into two categories. One category would be, all right, do you want help to get your time back, or do you want help to help you make more money? So it's really time and business growth and money. On the time side, you could look at all of the tasks that exactly what you just said that should be outsourced. You shouldn't be doing those. And that's one of the things I'll share with you. I'll send you over. I have a contract to close document that has 88 tasks that you should outsource. Wow. We all hear the transaction coordinator, right? Everyone knows what a transaction coordinator is. So I broke it down. I'll show you this. So for all those individuals, I'll send this out to you. So all of your listeners here, it's really broken down into 4 different sections. That's the pre-listing tasks. That's the listing tasks. You have the sale pending tasks and the post-closing tasks. And there's 88 within those that are, when you start really breaking it down and layering in, when everybody looks at those, they're going to be saying, why am I doing this? Because it's just a waste. My opinion is, if any real estate agent's sitting on their butt like I am doing right now, then you're not making money. You should be on your feet, building relationships, building your network, building your sphere of influence, et cetera. And that doesn't happen when you're sitting there, talking to an attorney, inputting stuff into a CRM, et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting. Yeah, and you're right. Those things need to happen. But interesting, that distinction of sitting on your butt versus up on your feet is that you're right. Some of the deepest relationships are made face-to-face, right? Now, should you have a social media presence? Absolutely, right? But a lot of that can happen, and best happens when it's out in the field. Like you documenting, I just went to a listing appointment. I just had a meeting with an attorney, and here's where I realized that I can be of value to my clients. Right? I mean, just that kind of content is super rich. It's real time. It's authentic. And it's awesome because it just happened, and you just helped somebody with that, right?
Yeah, and let me add to that. Sorry, I'm interrupted. I just want to add to that because that was an awesome point. Because if you just leave a closing, you talk to an attorney, that's way different than being in a listing appointment and you already have another closing that's going to happen. All of a sudden something happens and the world blows up, right? And you get an attorney call and the attorney saying, hey, you got to get a hold of, there's a potential lien holder here, or you got to get a hold of this person. Now you're out of your flow in your listing appointment and you end up losing that listing appointment or whatever. There's hours upon hours, just like you said, that are wasted from getting those calls and not having a transaction coordinator, as an example, which is a perfect role for a virtual assistant.
Funny you say that. Another one of my mentors, he mentioned that prior to going into a listing appointment, he would purposefully turn off his phone 30 minutes prior. Like he didn't want to hear from anybody for fear that he would get one of those calls, right? Like one of the calls, Murphy's Law, right? Where it comes right before and all of a sudden closing's delayed. And like the moving truck is waiting and now you've got to walk into a listing appointment. Like your head's not in the right spot to step in and for it to be game time. And so I think, what you said there is even taking it to another level, which is how can I be sure that some of these activities are never me? So where that stuff doesn't, now granted, there's certain problems that you as the CEO of your company are going to need to solve and you're going to need to be involved with it. But you don't necessarily need to be, on the ground floor catching all of it and hearing all of it. Sometimes, again, you've got good systems in place. A lot of that can be dealt with before it ever gets to your desk, ever gets to you.
Yep, exactly. And, you look at the top producing real estate agents, right? Do you ever hear of like DISC profiling?
Yeah,
personality, sure. Yep. Personality behavioral assessments. We do all of that. It's kind of interesting. When you look at real estate agents and the top producers, they're typically high D's and high I's, right? Yeah. To where, they're true go-getters. They're just drivers. They're entrepreneurs. They just want to get, either a listing or a buyer representation agreement, getting a buyer and seller under contract. That's what they want to do. And then as soon as they get it, they're on a high, right? Then they go home and then all of a sudden you say to take a balloon, it's like, now their energy is just sapped because they look at their computer and they're like, oh man, I just filled out this listing agreement. Now I got to input it into the MLS. I got to input it to the CRM. I got to go through all of these tasks where they want to just be out and they don't make any money doing that. Exactly what you just said earlier.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Riva Global. I'm going to put it up here on the screen because I think people need to be aware of this, that there's an option for them, right? And I think sometimes people are like, look, I'm not good at hiring people. Every time I have, it hasn't worked out well. They don't do as good a job of it as I do. And now I've got this big salary. In order to get a good person, I got to pay them super well. Maybe your business is to a point where you should be hiring somebody, but maybe you're at a point where you could just start to outsource some things, right? Talk to us a little bit about, so transaction coordination work is one of the key things you guys do, right? It sounds like.
Correct.
What are some other key things, Bob, that you think people ought to be outsourcing that you see them not outsourcing?
So when you break it down to the example I gave earlier, which is time and money, right? So time, you could actually put transaction coordinating under money as well, but we'll put that under time because you get your time back and you should be out there networking, building your sphere. We covered that. But the other side of money and helping you make money is working on all of the leads that you get in your business. So for example, many brokers, many agents, et cetera, they buy, whether they're Zillow leads, whether they're realtor.com leads, RedX leads, wherever they get them in, right? So what happens is they buy those leads and they are dialing all of those leads. And if they pick up the phone and they outbound dial one lead, they don't answer, they never follow up with them again. They dial another one down. So they keep dialing until somebody answers. And the average connect rate is not too high for someone to actually answer the phone. So what we do is actually, we have a whole process where we train our virtual assistants to follow up with those leads, right? So the first call, you buy those leads because agents invest a lot of money on buying leads, typically a lot. And this is not everybody, but many of them do. Sure. So when you're going to do that, you got to turn, I always look at, how are we going to monetize when we pay for something as a lead? How are we going to monetize those leads, right? I think it's really, really important. And so the system that we have is, number one, you buy the lead. Number two, the first call should be done by the agent. And if they leave the message, they introduce the team, they introduce themselves, and then they pass it off to the virtual assistant. And you can break it up into 3 categories. You go warm, lukewarm, or cold. You know, however you want to categorize it. If it's in a neighborhood you really, really love, guess what? That's warm, right? Different type of property, sellable property, location, etc., right? So what we do is you have your virtual assistant call every 7 days, right? So now you're calling them every 7 days until they tell you to stop calling them, right? For me personally, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to stop doing it because it's so much work on my plate, right? Can you imagine calling everyone every 7 days and you have 100, 200, 300 leads? So if it's lukewarm, you have your VA call every 21 days. If it's cold, you have them call every 30 days. You could also add a text message in there and an email, all done by our virtual assistant. Because what is it? 70% of all properties, whether they're listings or getting someone under a buyer representation agreement, 70% is all done through follow-up.
Interesting.
Yep.
7 out of 10 of those close via follow-up.
Yep.
You know, I'm going to throw in another component here that came to mind as you were describing this, is to have an agent doing that work. It's a little bit of an energy drain, right? My guess is that they're not dialers by trade or dialers at heart. Yes, they want to scale their business. Yes, they want more leads, but they don't necessarily want to be the ones that are always making those phone calls. And so in addition to protecting time and money, it's also protecting energy, right? At the end of the day, all of us have a certain limited amount of energy. And if you put an agent long enough doing an activity that drains their energy, it doesn't matter how much more time of the day they have, they're not going to have a desire to want to do anything else. They're going to screw around surfing Facebook, right? And so I think what this can do also is have them ask the question of what are the activities that I do that fire me up, that actually put more energy into my tank, right? There's certain things that we do that, although it's an expenditure of energy, it's so much aligned with who we are and our passion. For me, it's these interviews, right? I walk into these interviews with more energy than when I got onto the conversation. So I think finding out what is your sweet spot, what's the thing that you absolutely love to do, and then like spend more time doing that, and everything that doesn't fit within that, not everything, right? I mean, the reality is there's some things that you might have to do that you don't love, but the more of those things that you don't love, that you aren't great at, that suck your energy as opposed to rebuilding your energy, look at outsourcing those, right? Take a look at like Riva Global to say, hey, can you guys take care of this? Do you guys have an option for getting this off my plate?
Yeah, and I think I could add to that because hundreds of agents that I've worked with for the last 5 years, right? I look at that and it's the same pain points. It is that time, right, on one side of it, because majority of agents, I'm just using this, it's not, I don't know the exact stat, but many agents have families just like us, right? And if you want to, I got to tell you a funny story too in a second, but if you want to have dinner with your family without the phone blowing up and you having to answer all of those calls, it's tough to do, right? Back in 2005, after I started in 2004, I got my real estate license in 2005. I listed this property as a short sale property in Guilford, Connecticut. You mind if I go off on a little tangent here?
Go for it, man.
I'm sitting there with my family eating dinner. And, for me, I like going out and networking and building my businesses, et cetera, right? So I kept getting a call. My phone was sitting right here. It blew up and rang 55 times for this one property in Guilford. I picked up the phone. I looked over at my wife. I'm like, dude, I'm done. I'm out. I am no longer going to be listing a property ever again. So now I learned from that to build my team, and I built my sphere of agents around me to handle all of that information. And that is a perfect thing to do as an agent. And I know everyone's building teams now, but a virtual assistant is, they do a lot for me on the investor side. Is they do all call answering for me. So all my leads and all my marketing that I send out, they do live answering as well. So that's one of the things that you could do as an assistant.
I mean, case in point, right? How in the world do you do the amount of business that you have in the time frame that you've done? There's only one answer, which is you've figured out how to outsource some stuff.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you're a product of the product.
I am. And what's funny? Someone asked me the other day is, why did you start this company? So through the years back in 2004, when I started investing and starting a couple education programs, there was one thing that I noticed, and that was within agents and investors and all real estate professionals, is that everybody needs a little more help, right? Everybody needs a way to get their time back, but everybody needs assistance and affordable assistance, right? Because I live in Connecticut, and if I had to hire someone, it would cost me, $20+ per hour. Plus I have to pay their insurance. I have to pay, taxes, et cetera. So before you know it, I'm paying this person net out of my pocket $50-something thousand. right? So I'm like, all right, there's got to be an answer. So it took me a long time. And in 2013, I got introduced to the virtual assistant world. And then obviously with my education and training background, I had an idea within that 2013 before I launched is, all right, how do I actually take what I've learned in training, but implement that in the virtual assistant world? Now, for those of you listening, if you've ever started a company in the Philippines or another country, it's obviously not easy, right?
Yeah.
If you started here in the United States, it's easy, but figured it out, through a lot of wins, a lot of losses, figured it out to where now we set up a whole recruiting company, recruiting department, training department, placements, and operations and HR, et cetera, over the Philippines. So it's pretty cool.
So that obviously makes it affordable for people, right, to outsource. They're not
Correct.
paying American wages, right?
Yep.
And gives them the ability to really serve their clients at a really high level, and really be, as I understand it, a great blessing to people in the Philippines, right? The amount that you're able to pay them is a tremendous salary for them and their family, right? It's a really good opportunity.
Yeah, and I just came from there, I'll be honest with you, it's such a great feeling inside. We pay for all their health insurance, so it's just a very nice thing that we could be able to commit and give to them. And I met a lot of our teams, our support team's family, their kids, etc. And it was just a great time. And it's really nice to see how, and really humbling and gratifying how you could help change people's lives, and they're the best of the best. So I'm blessed.
Well, you think about that, I know a lot of real estate agents, their true passion is to impact other people. And one day, once they get their business to a certain spot, or they're going to go, serve in a third world country. And what I hear you saying is that, like, actually, by living a better life yourself and spending more time with your family and outsourcing some of this, you can actually be of great service to people living in the Philippines.
100%. And, if any of you on this call have ever worked with Filipino virtual assistants or anybody in the Philippines, incredibly loving, family oriented, just very like servant leadership and just serving individuals. So if you have a chance to go there, I highly recommend it. I do want to say there's a ton of traffic though. If you go there, you're going to be sitting in traffic for a long time, but absolutely incredible.
Great stuff, man. So fun to have this conversation with you, and hopefully open up some minds and some paradigms about, man, Justin, all this stuff that you share on the Think Bigger Real Estate, these guests that you bring, I want to apply it. But at the end of the day, I get off watching your episodes and I don't have time. Well, guess what? Bob is your answer, right? He's going to send to me a copy of this report of stuff that you ought to be outsourcing. I'm going to put it in the Think Bigger Real Estate group. So if you're not yet a member of that, go find the group on Facebook. I'm going to put it in there. And you're going to go through and you're going to start to identify things that you can be outsourcing so that you can have time to build the business you want, have the life that you want. Bob, I'm going to end with this question. It's kind of our signature question of the show. What is it that you do, some intentional activity or practice that you do that helps you to be a big thinker? Obviously, with what you're doing, you've built companies in other parts of the world. You've done some amazing things. How do you do it? Like, how do you consistently think bigger? Teach us.
It's funny. This is two different things. Number one, I listen to podcasts. I listen to your podcast. I get so for every single podcast, if you get one thing, you take it and you implement it. You get an idea, you take and you implement it. That's one of the things that I do. I also read books and I implement those books. I'm reading the book called Traction right now. And really it's transforming my business. It's amazing. So those are two of the things that I do. And I highly recommend that book. It's really incredible. It's called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, on what it's based on. So I highly recommend that. But those are two of the things that I do.
Killer. Who's the author of that book? Do you remember? Because it's funny.
Gino Wickman.
Okay, perfect. Because I actually had a good friend and client of mine who recommended yesterday. He's like, you need to read Traction with what you're doing with Think Bigger. You're going to love that book. And I went on Audible today, actually, and there's two books called Traction. And I was like, which one is it? I didn't have a chance to reach out to him yet. So I'm sure it's the same one.
And I'd recommend too to buy it. So I bought it for all of my team, all of my manager team members. Wow. So everybody is following that now. Okay. So I'm really, really incredible. If you have me on again in another 6 months, and or just touch base, give me a call. I'd love to share what the results of that book is. Done.
We're booking it, man. All right, buddy. Nice. This has been so much fun. Thank you for contributing so much to the Think Bigger Real Estate audience. Really appreciate you, and appreciate the guests that have tuned in to watch this live. And of course, a thank you to all of you that will watch this later on. If you do both Bob and I the favor, if this has been valuable at all, will you write it in the comments? Just put valuable. And even if you feel so inclined, share this out. Bob's impact will be further spread to more people. And frankly, you got a message that I want to share with more people, Bob. So
Awesome.
thanks again for tuning in and for being a part of this.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.